Welcome, everybody, to Moonlighting, Montana. Week 2, no longer piloting anymore. And as you can see, got my co-host. And it's going to be good because I'm going to be able to make fun of it. Just two guys, not very good at high school sports. Now can invest our interest in high school sports. But yeah, Cody Kreiner, everybody. Big round of applause. A bit about yourself, Cody.
Well, as you know, my name is Cody Kreiner. I lived in Helena for the last 2.5 years. I grew up in Belgrade, graduated with a wonderful class of 2011 Belgrade High. I've known Andrew pretty much since I was in kindergarten. Coached high school football in Belgrade for several years, and now I'm just cop in Helena. So
yeah, all right, enough about yourself, buddy. Okay, so today, right off the bat, we're gonna go through scores and then get our special guest on here to interview. That's kind of our cliche here. I'm gonna start from Class C and work our way up this week. Cody will take care of a little bit more AA and A action, seeing as that he knows a little bit more about that. I follow C, taught in a C school for a while, coached there, so I follow C pretty well. And Class B is just super strong this year. So right off the bat, I'm going to start with Flint Creek versus Sheridan. Don't really need to get into that. I think you guys know what happened there. 58-6, Flint Creek over Sheridan. Fromberg versus Broadview Levita. Broadview Levita has been putting up numbers lately. Broadview Levita puts 58 up on Fromberg, and they only score 7. Clyde Park, 48, Reed Point 6. Stanford, 14, and Geraldine, 40. Guys don't know a whole lot about these teams. We're going to learn. We're going to have more coaches on to teach us a little bit more about these other teams. But for now, just don't really know. Power versus Valier, 14-18. That's low scoring for those low numbers of kids there. Lone Peak, 48. Sims, 54. Sims is a really good team. Got to watch them play against Ennis a little bit. Ennis is super strong, and they're one of my favorites, close to my heart, as you know. But Sims pulls off the victory there against Lone Peak. Thompson Falls loses 13-59 against Eureka. Holy crap. Eureka absolutely smashing the state champs from last year. Obviously, division jumps, so it's a little different. And then we got a basketball score going on versus Webo versus Lambert. Lambert 77, Webo 46. Gardner 7, Knoxville 42. Hayes versus Fort Benton. That was actually a forfeit. I think Hayes Lodgepole didn't have enough guys or something was going on, so they forfeited Fort Benton. Mission 64, Darby 14. Mission's been rolling teams lately. Fairview 40, Culbertson 28. Plentywood 39, Mondack 6. Ennis 52, Shoto 14. Shout out Coach Mike Speck, had him on last week. Told us that he thought he could get the win versus Shoto, and he delivered. I picked them to roll out the rest of the season. They've been doing really well lately. Winifred 35, Chester 28. Charlo 32 and Alberton 56. Coach J Mack taking care of business down there. Coach Reese Cox and Charlo on a little bit of a skid here, but good guy, and he'll get those boys back on track. They're a very young team, and I know they're dealing with some injuries. Sealy 24, Cascade 32, Custer 40, Bridger 22, Harlem 12, Belt 57. Belt, one of our favorites, right? Arlee 62, Troy 20, Lodgegrass 8, Park City 55. Didn't get this final score of the Shelby Joliet game, but Joliet, I would imagine, got that final. We have a couple of scores that weren't reported. One game in particular I watched, which was the Plains versus my old squad, the Victor Pirates, getting the win for the season. Victor 44, Plains 12. Good job, Pirates. Then we had White Sulphur Lima, Ekalaka Circle, Big Sandy versus Heartview. I actually watched a little bit of that game. I'm imagining Big Sandy came out on top, and wow, was that a roller coaster ride to go on. Shout out Tucker Taylor, our buddy. Watching that is like watching flag football 40-year-old men playing. But what I will say is the exciting part about it is there are some athletes playing at Big Sandy. There's no jokes about it. They are just flat out good. So yeah, shout out Big Sandy. Harlow, Tri-City didn't get it. Twin Bridges, West Yellowstone didn't get that one. Freud, Medicine Lake, First Garfield, North Star, Box Elder, Scobie, Poplar, Summers, GF Central. So if your team's one of those teams, please report the score to ScoreStream. It makes it a lot easier for us to get these scores out to the people that care. Class B action. Red Lodge taking on Shepherd, 32-13. Shepherd takes the victory there. Now, this is my shocker of the week. Boulder goes down to Manhattan, 12-0. Now, there was some rumblings of a missed fumble call, and I saw the pictures of it. I think there was a missed call. Doesn't mean that the game would have changed at all. I'm not saying that, but that's a big disappointment for Boulder to go through there. Boulder should be taking that victory, but congratulations to Manhattan taking that one. Huntley absolutely rolls Baker 62-0. Whitehall 35, Big Timber 6. Dang, Big Timber looks so strong for a few weeks, and then Whitehall comes out and gets the win. Malta 35, Cutbank 6. Conrad 0, Glasgow 60. Roundup 26, Colstrip 48. What are up with these scores? Coaches are running the running gun offense all over the state. We got high scoring games. Columbus 8, Townsend 47. Loyola 14, Big Fork 47. It feels redundant to even mention Big Fork scores anymore because they're just beating teams. But then Florence, Fly High Falcons 46, Anaconda 0. And I'll let my co-host take over A and double A action for you.
So Whitefish Bulldogs took care of Libby 48-39. Hamilton Bronx, shout out Bryce Carver, head coach of Hamilton, took care of business against Ronan. Haver beat their Lockwood 36-7. Shout out Jake Kreiner, my cousin. He is a coach up at Haver. Burgers 55, Hardin 18. Dawson County 48, Hart 6. We have Laurel 12 and Miles City 7. That's a pretty close game down there in the Eastern Conference Class A. East Helena Vigilantes didn't quite make it there against Corvallis, 52-13. Corvallis got the win. Frenchtown versus Blanks Butte Central Maroons, 36-0. Columbia Falls, 69. Browning 12. Billings Central, 35. And Sydney 0. Class AA, no surprise, Helena High took care of business against Flathead, 34-7. Glacier against Butte High. Glacier got the win 55-41, high scoring game for Class AA. Bozeman High 36, CMR 11. Crosstown game of Billings Senior versus Billings West. Billings West took care of business 34-21. Missoula Sentinel 43, Big Sky 13, another crosstown game. You can almost call this a crosstown game. Gallatin versus Belgrade High. Gallatin got the win 40-14. Great Falls 38, Skyview 8. And Capital put 52 on the board against Hellgate. No surprise there. So Capital still remaining as the only unbeaten team in Class AA. Just want to touch on something. Do we have crosstown state championship brewing in Class A?
In Class A?
Class AA.
Class AA, I will tell you, the game that's coming up this next week is exciting. Helena High versus Helena Capital. If you're in the Helena area and you like football, that's where you're going to want to be.
2 weeks. Not just following week, the week after.
That's where you want to be. That game's going to be electric. The kid that you were actually talking to me about from Capital, defensive powerhouse, and then the kid from Helena High, Manu Mello. He had another electric week against Flathead with 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. If you watch his games too, I'm not kidding. The quarterback missed him on about 2 slant and go routes, 3 slant and go routes, where he would have had another 60-yard touchdown. That kid is electric. He is fun to watch. Yeah, I'd say that that's the state championship. We actually have a really good one in Class A too. Rumblings say that Eastern A is weak when you really look at the Western A conference.
Which is funny because for years, the Eastern Class A was the powerhouse conferences across the state.
Right. But the Eastern A, as far as the teams to beat, are obviously Ferguson, Billings Central, the battle of unbeatens, and guess who plays each other coming up next
This weekend?
Fergus versus Billings Central. I'm going to lock in my pick with Fergus. I'm going to pick the upset. I know those coaches down there in Fergus, great guys, interested in coming on the show, and we'd love to have you. But yeah, enough about that. Now, what we would like to do is have our esteemed guest on. Everybody, welcome to the show. Quinn Chamberlain, coach at Florence Falcons. How long have you been coaching there now, Quinn?
Oh gosh, this is year 7.
Year 7? Okay, that's longer than I knew you were coaching there. But that's a long time. I guess kind of want to, yeah.
Before we get into the Class B stuff, Quinn, I know you're on the Capital kid, you're not a Capital alum, and I know how prideful the Bruin alumni are. What's your take on Class AA right now?
Double A is tough, man. I don't get to watch a lot of the games. Obviously, a lot of what I go off of is who's getting scholarship offers, and Capital is loaded. They've got kids going D1. They've got kids going Frontier. They are super, super talented.
Now, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, I like the excitement behind it. Obviously, you know what a crosstown game is, and especially in a year where Helena High and Capital are really good. What you growing up in Helena, what do you think it would do to this town if we did have a crosstown state championship?
That game for both schools is really, really historic. They throw everything at you that week. It can kind of be out of element just for the regular season game. So I'm assuming with the state championship type atmosphere, it's going to be kind of an out of body, out of mind experience, both for the community and the kids. It would be, as Andrew was saying, electric.
Absolutely, that's my take on it, and I think it'd be awesome for this town. Not that I'm rooting for anybody in specific, but just for being a Helena person, I think it would be unbelievable. I don't think it's something that this town's ever seen. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's ever been a crosstown state championship, but I think that would be something really cool to see. And I think this whole town would shut down for that Friday evening.
I don't think it would shut down. I think a fire would start, Kreiner. I think the town would burn down.
Well, that's what we need too. I mean, right now Helena's on top of the world. I don't know what's brewing in Helena. I hear some of the great athletes are coming out from Montana City, which, I mean, maybe they are, but we got good basketball teams in Helena. We got good football going on in Helena. They're kind of taking the state by storm right now. And I don't know, like you guys said, it's kind of fun to watch. It's kind of nice to sit back. But talking about Class AA is really interesting. But what I want to talk to you about and your knowledge of the game is on Class B. And I want to kind of open up with one that I was actually curious about, a question. Going into a season where you are a reigning state champion, right? Because a lot of people have never felt that. Athletes, coaches, and what it takes. Are you more motivated going into that season? Are you maybe more lax? And if you're more lax, how do you fix that? And I guess just what's the general vibe going into a season after being a state champion?
It was one of those experiences where last year we had a group that for Florence was a trailblazing team. They hadn't experienced really any sort of winning since 1977. So having a group of kids like that come through where we sent 2 to Division I, 3 to Frontier, and then a few more that were capable of playing just chose not to, was one of those moments as a coach, like, dang, I'm doing something right. And going into this year, we've always stressed like process over product, doing certain things a certain way. And coming off of last year, it's getting everybody acclimated to the standard of the program. And it's been up and down, and you have to adjust to the kids. Coaching is different from even like 7 years ago, and it's way different from when we played. And you're constantly catering to different adversity in the community, within the school. The systems have changed, programs have changed. So this year, our biggest emphasis is just take it one game at a time, worry about the moment, being present, and really just focusing on like alignment, assignment, technique, finish, and doing your job rather than, state championship. And that's something that's super hard to do with 15 to 18-year-olds that really every day aren't worried about that in moment experience. They're worried about the final outcome. So it's been a tough road this year, learning and adjusting, but it's been super fun.
Yeah.
So Quinn, I got a question for you. You've been in Florence for 7 years. And I've talked to other coaches about it, and different coaches have different ideas. So at college, we're able to recruit to your schematic style, like whether it's offensive, defense, recruit the type of players you want. What are your thoughts in high school? Because I know a lot of high schools, they run the same schematics for 5, 10, depending on how long the coach is there. They can run the same offense, same defense for 30 years. But you get different players every year that come through your class. What is your thought? Are you more of adapt to the players you have and use your schemes based off of that, or are you trying to base yours or run your schemes and get your players to adjust to those schemes?
Yeah, so we call it FBI, standing for football intelligence. And part of that, like reloading, because we're one of the few Class B schools that runs a spread offense. You'll see a lot of like heavy wing T, heavy run, shotgun wing T type teams out in the East and the North, and we spread it out. And what I found over the last few years, the best way to do that is teach as much about the game that you possibly can. It's not just hey, you're going down to Mike. It's understanding why you're going there. So I think to answer your question, like we've had no issues finding kids to fill those roles. Obviously, each year you have like Timmy might not be able to catch the ball.
Yeah, different type of talent than you had the prior year.
Exactly, and that's something that we've had to adjust. We might not call mesh on third down anymore, but we might adjust our scheme down and distance wise rather than totally changing an offense.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And two, another thing, like you said, the aforementioned Eastern layout of B, something us Westerners, I don't know how Western we are here in Helena, but us Westerners, for me, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about those teams in the East. I follow the teams around here, and I get to see them a little bit, and then obviously the connections I get to see. What is kind of the layout of B? Who's strong over there? Who's teams that you guys have on your radar?
Townsend's super strong. They return a lot of skill positions that are fast and physical, and they're tough. They're a tough community. Jefferson, when we lost that game, it was tough because they were tough. I think the North and the East, I'm a little bit uncertain of. It's very tough to watch their film because it's wing T versus wing T, 4-4 versus 4-4. So you kind of see a lot of I don't know what's going on in Eastern Montana, but they're all like clones of each other on film. Conrad is very similar to Fairfield to Glasgow. Huntley Project is making a lot of waves, and they throw the ball 4 times a game. So it's one of those things. It's tough for us to scout. We'll throw the ball 35 times a game. It's a very different prospect from East, North to South and West. Townsend, I would say, is probably the team in the South to beat that slings the rock and is pretty diversified.
Yeah. Now, Quinn, with the Eastern teams, because I know I've seen it in Class A. Do you think there's a certain culture that comes with that? I know from my experience, it seems like a lot of the Eastern teams in most classes, they rely on that physicality, that size, and all that stuff, that kind of that smash mouth football. Where you see a lot of the Western teams are more spread out. They're might be faster and more athletic. Is there something to say about that in different cultures and how everything is over there?
I think geographically is the big thing. If you've ever been to Fairfield in late October, early November, it is miserable. You cannot throw the ball in Fairfield in that time of year. And, that's why it's so important that you win your conference to avoid going on the road to Big Timber, Huntley Project, Fairfield. I mean, Florence to Glasgow is like a nightmare, taking 15 to 18-year-olds on a bus for that long. So you want that first seed to make people travel to you to kind of control that atmosphere. But I think really it's just in the eastern side of the state, like coaches are relatively older. They've been teaching the same things, been based in the community. And then, you just have more population on the western side of the state, which allows teams to have newer offenses, more modern thoughts is what I think. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if
No,
they're
absolutely.
tougher.
I think you're right. I think you got it perfectly correct with especially the population. There's more people coming through than you see than in like the Miles Cities and the Weebos and places like that. I just know from my experience, it seemed like call them the big farm kids of the East because that's usually what they were. The East was always bigger and stronger, and that's what they based their offenses around of. When I coached and even when I played, I mean, there was Miles City teams that had bigger offensive lines than I think most of the Frontier Conference teams. And they would just run it down your throat all game, and by the third quarter, you're ready to just be done with it. And so, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it is completely based on the population, and then I think especially what you said with older coaches, there's more I would say tenureship, and that's not a hit on the Western teams at all. I think there's just more of those opportunities to go elsewhere for those coaches or stuff like that, where I think you get more of the hometown coaches where they're not going to pick up and leave for other jobs. They might stay in a place like out there in the East and coach for 20 years.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things like when you like go experience that brand of football for the first time, it is shocking. The first year we made the playoffs, like we thought we were good. We went down to Big Timber and they had two O-linemen that were going to the Cats, another one that signed a Frontier deal. The first play, they ran one of our plays that they stole and took it 80 yards to the house, and we had 10 guys on the ground. And it is a tough place to play. They are tough kids. I think we've taken a lot of steps in the last few years to adapt and learn that pace of football to where, now we're kind of the brand that people are chasing. Now, when I watch film, I see people stealing and grabbing things that little old Florence is running, and that's pretty cool. So it's cool to kind of bring that toughness element to the western side of the state, because it is something that I think was missing for a long time, except for Eureka. I mean, they've kind of been the staple of our conference for a long time until the last few years.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. I think Montana as a whole, everybody's pretty Montana prideful, whether it's you're in Plentywood or you're in Libby. But I think it is kind of cool to watch. There is that little different mindset between the East and the West when it comes to, I'd say, more in the Class B and the Class C range of schematics and how they run a program or an offense or a defense. So I think that kind of an inner rivalry there is kind of cool to watch.
Yeah. And I guess this isn't even a rivalry. The two teams that I want to talk about or touch on a little bit more and be, first of all, what the heck's going on in Boulder, dude? How up and down can a team be? What's going on?
I don't know. I was really shocked to see them lose to Manhattan, but here's the thing. Manhattan had a lot of talent when we played them.
Yeah.
It was just new coach, first game, Washington Grizzly. Their kids were kind of spinning. They didn't really know what was going on. By the time they kind of got comfortable in the game, we were up 30. And, their leadership comes from their defensive front, super, super strong. And I think that kind of matches up well with Boulder. They have a quarterback who doesn't have a strong arm, super athletic, not taking that away from him. But I think two smash mouth teams kind of hitting head to head, and that might have gotten the best of Jefferson a little bit in that matchup.
Yeah, I just get shocked, and I don't really know. Like you said, Big Timber's kind of that old school style, but they barely lost to. I mean, I saw Jefferson beat Florence, and I was like, okay, they're elite. And then I watched them slowly downtrend, and maybe it is that. Maybe it's just sticking with the same old thing. But jumping ship to the other team that I wanted to touch on. What is it going to take to knock off the Big Four Vikings this year? Because right now, they are a freight train.
Big Fork is super strong. They've got a really strong D line. Where they're weak, they put things in place to make them safer, to put kids in positions where they can be successful. They're super well coached and super disciplined. I think we give them fits Big Fork hasn't played any teams that like to spread the ball out. And that last year was kind of that same collision. And I'm watching film on them today, and they have to change something if they play us, just with how they line up. They haven't played anybody who can spread the ball from hash to hash with a quarterback who can sling it. I really just think executing like our simple plays and doing things at a very high speed and playing super physical will give us a shot. And I'm curious to see what they come out in, and if they're going to adjust to us the same way they did in the state championship last year.
Yeah, what a great state championship that was too. I was there. That was like watching college football. It didn't even seem real. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the year goes on for sure.
Yeah, what do you think we need to do to beat Big Fork, Kreiner?
Honestly, well, they're moving to A next year, aren't they?
They are, and I would guess that we're probably short behind them enrollment-wise, but time will tell. I don't know.
Oh, really? Florence moving to Class A?
Inside scoop.
I don't know. Like 1 year, it's like what?
Inside scoop, baby. You're giving us the inside scoop. That's why we had John here, dude. I didn't even know Florence might be moving to Class A. I didn't even know.
Like 1 year, our enrollment will hit, and then it'll fall for 2 years. And in order to move up to Class A, your enrollment has to hit for 3. So It's probably a matter of time. During COVID, a lot of people moved in. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, there are going to be a lot more moving there. That Bitterroot is growing, and right now, here's the inside scoop of the Bitterroot from a previous Bitterrooter. Kids don't want to go to Stevensville anymore, so they're going to be going to teams in cultures like you guys got in Florence and communities. Now, if that continues to grow, or if all these places continue to grow, it remains to be seen. But Big Fork going to Class A really changes a whole lot of things. It changes teams, divisions they're playing in, especially here in Helena. I know East Helena is now going to be in the Eastern Division. They'll be making 7-hour bus rides to play conference games against Sydney, against all these teams. So it's a big change, and I know they had to look at that a little bit. But to beat Big Fork, I think, like you said, you trust that arm, that gunslinger you guys got at quarterback. Talked to 2 coaches now, both who have, in my eyes, very elite level quarterbacks. Obviously, your quarterback is elite on the scope of entire Montana football. And so I think that you guys, if you continue to trust in what he can do, he's played him. He played him on the biggest stage in the whole world. Been playing a lot of varsity football, and I think I just think that Florence trends upwards, and I think you guys have trended upwards, whereas other teams throughout the state, especially in B that I'm seeing, are starting to trend almost downwards. You're kind of these games are the big ones right now. Here on out, big games all across divisions, and you guys are still trending upwards, which is always really good to see.
Yeah, it's one of those things like Big Fork and us, we have it's a pretty big rivalry at this point. We're close with their coaches. They're close with us. We know each other in and out, and they return a lot of people, and so do we. So it should be a really, really cool game to tune into, especially at their place overlooking the lake. All that new taxpayer money should be a really good game. Good scene.
Who do you guys play next week?
We play Loyola after Big Fork in Loyola.
Yeah, you play Loyola, then Big Fork?
No. Big Fork, then Loyola.
Oh, Big Fork. You play Big Fork this coming week.
Yep.
Dude, you just can't even teleport to games. NFHS, I'm going to have to pull up all these streams. There's big games going on all over the place. And that'll lead us into our finisher here with you. That I always like to ask the coaches here, and you might just have to take a random guess, because who knows if you know what's going on in these divisions. But we'll ask you who your favorites are in a class other than Class B? Obvious conflict of interest there. If you didn't say Florence, what would people say about you? But let's go ahead and start with Class AA. Who do you think has it? Because I know for a fact it's going to hurt your soul to say that the Bengals are going to win this year, but they're really good.
Well, they won in big moments, which is what really stands out to me. Going to Sentinel and knocking them off is a huge feat and not easy. But I do think that Helena Capital is super talented, and I went to school there, but I think that this is the Brew Crew's year in AA.
And don't forget Missoula Sentinel, because I mean, like I was saying last week, Helena High probably should have just lost that game, because Missoula Sentinel has been putting a hurting on everyone. Everyone they
And not only
played.
that, Helena High beat them soundly.
Yeah, well, it woke something up, dude. It woke something up because poor Flathead felt the wrath after that. Well, it poured 70 on him, and I don't. Missoula Sentinel's not out of the running yet, but I agree with you that I think that the title should stay in Helena. What about you?
I think the favorite right now is definitely Capital. I think their ability, it just seemed, I watched a couple of the games this year, but their ability to have an offensive defense and not have as many two-way players. I recently watched a game against Glacier, which Glacier was beating them in the first half, and their quarterback was having his way with their defense. In that third quarter, it was a totally different ball game from there for the rest. They should put a point on the board for the second half. But having that ability in Class AA to have maybe only a handful of kids play both ways, and having that ability to play hard in the second half because you have kids that are only playing one way, and have that second wind is something to be said in Class AA. It seemed like a lot more of the Glacier kids were playing both ways, and I think it caught up to them in the end.
Yeah, agreed. And now, as we move on to Class A, if you didn't know where you guys are located, there's a lot of good Class A football being played. I don't know if you've watched the kid from Polson yet, but my man's pretty good. My man's pretty talented. And they got triplets on the team. Wide receiver, I don't know what the other one is, but they're all really good. But yeah, Class A, throw one out there.
I like Polson. I think it's going to come down to like a Billings Central, Hamilton, Polson mix, maybe even a Columbia Falls or a Ferguson there. But I like what Carter's doing in Hamilton, man.
Fly Eagles fly. Class B, I'll let you make a pick for Class B. What do you say?
Well, obviously, don't count out Florence, but I think just looking at the scores and watching the updates, I'd say if you want to mute Quinny while I say this right now, Big Fork is, I think, the team to beat. I don't think that means they'll win it, but I think they've established themselves as the team to beat in Class B. But that whole narrative can change in a week. So, but in where we're standing now, I think they've put themselves at the top right now, as far as what the rest of Class B or who all is aiming at a team right now. I think Big Fork is the team that is everybody's aiming to take down.
Yeah, I mean, I think he agrees that they're the team to beat because they haven't been. So technically speaking, they are the team to beat. But Class B is interesting, man. I like it. It's close. I guess moving on to the real one where we could come up with names and teams from all over the place. Class C. And because I watch a lot of Class C, I'll throw out my pick, and it's not going to be Ennis, even though, like I said, Mike Speck on the show. But god darn it, Flint Creek's good again. And so I think if I was going to have to bet, if I was a betting man, I'd have to put it on Flint Creek. But I don't really know a whole lot about C in the East. The thing about C in the East is now you're diving into more 6-man territory rather than 8-man. But I would say for 8-man football in Class C, gotta be Flint Creek.
Yeah, and Class B and C, and I'm sure Quinn can attest to this, especially with how many schools are in Class B, how Class C, and the eastern part of the state doesn't see the western part of the state. Quinn, you could probably comment this. It's really hard to get a gauge on those teams that are dominating on one side of the state that don't really come onto your side of the state in your conference, play those out of conferences games until you meet them in the playoffs. I think we've seen several times where a 1 seed coming out of the West has gone to the East and played a lower seed, or vice versa, and gotten beat pretty severely in the playoffs. It's hard to gauge because there's not that much meshing like we see in Class A and Class AA, where we can kind of tell who the powerhouses are on each year. It's just so different in Class B and Class C.
Yeah, totally. No, it you don't know until you see somebody live or in person. So it's tough to go watch a game in Glasgow or get a gauge of that. So there you go.
Yeah. What do you think, Class C, Quinn?
You're asking the wrong guy, man. I mean, I'm just gonna throw one out there, a Valley loyalist, and say the Victor Pirates. Don't count them out. Don't count them out.
Oh, shout out. My boys at Victor will have their hearts warm. They're coming off of a big win against the Plains Horsemen, man. Plains Horsemen, yeah, they're going to feel really good about that. I will say this too, and this is shout out Coach Brady at East Helena. He kind of trailblazed that at Mission. If I were going to make my crazy bet, I would bet that Mission's so good this year. But yeah, shout out Victor Pirates. What a win. They're riding high. You might be right. They might take this energy all the way. They might not stop. They might just beat teams all the way. I love it. I love it. But yeah, is there anything you want to say before you hop off? We really appreciate you being on here and everything with us.
Just thanks for having me on. Call me anytime. It's been a pleasure, Kreiner. You look good, man. Andrew, the mustache is looking greasy and beautiful as ever. And yeah, nice seeing you fellas.
Yeah, good to see you too, Quinny. And a little quick round of applause to congratulate Quinny on the engagement. Golf clap for Quinny. Our man in the race, us old fellas, we're forming a task force. We're going to sit outside of Target while our wives go shopping and talk about Montana football. But we really appreciate you having coming and spending some time with us, Quinny. And yeah, always good to talk to you, brother.
All righty, fellas. Take care. We'll see ya.
All right, later. All right, so that's going to conclude our show. Thank you guys for having us. I do want to mention today that our video conferencing is sponsored by Granite Technology out of Missoula, bringing you the best of what we can here, interviewing coaches. Very nice to have Cody on. This should be a regular thing. Updating to Frontier Conference scores and some Bobcat Grizz scores as we move along, and obviously things being changed as we get a little bit more official. But any closing statements you want to make, Mr. Kreiner?
It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, you bet, brother. You bet. I'll get you your check after this. Toodaloo, friends. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. You've been watching Moonlighting Montana. Thank you.